how important is the skill of detachment, and and you're also in a leadership position, so how do you teach people or advise people on practicing the skill of detachment? Because you have to, right?
So you absolutely do. So I have some opinions here. I just want to make sure I state up front that these are like Curtis's opinions. These are things that I've done. So one, I've had multiple AFSs in the Air Force. I used to be an avionics technician. I worked 16s, 22s, MQ1s, and MQ9s. Awesome experience, but at the time it was a very different culture. So switching over to the EOD culture, we almost teach that from the beginning. Some things that we do to teach that is one, it's pretty rare that people wear their uniform to and from work. And I'd like to I'm not saying that that's what everybody should do, but for me, I find that that's actually a super helpful thing, because for me, it's almost like the period at the end of a sentence. So I finish work, I take my uniform off, I put it in my closet at work or in my locker or wherever I'm storing it, and I'm done. At that point, I'm sort of going from who I am in the military to Kurtis, going back to Kurtis. I can stop somewhere on the way home and I'm just a normal Joe. And we do that as a culture, like almost universally, EOD technicians don't wear their uniform to and from work. And that's not all of them. That's why it's almost universally. But that's the first thing right there, is learning how to have that disconnect. Two, try to have a group of friends that are separate. And I'm not saying that you got to lead two separate lives or anything like that. They're obviously going to know who you are. But having people that, one, are at least outside of your culture as far as an AFS. Two, having someone that's just outside the military. Have some people that have zero military background and just bounce ideas off them. Because I don't know if other military members realize this or not, but a lot of the stuff we do is bonkers. Absolutely ridiculous. Try to explain to somebody like a change of command formation. Explain that to a civilian that has zero context as to what's going on, because you're explaining like basically, hey, we got new management coming in and they want to see everybody. If you look at the historical context of a change of command, it's wildly important because, it was developed during a time where social media wasn't a thing, like the internet wasn't a thing. So you got to see who's in charge of you.
Sometimes these are outside.
Yes, and sometimes, well, yeah. So like you're explaining like, yeah, so new management came in and we all stood in this block thing. Like I stood next to someone behind somebody and someone was behind me. And it was this massive gaggle. It was like 100 degrees outside. We practiced this for like 6 hours just to make sure that we could stand there for 15 minutes.
And rigidly, right?
Rigidly.
Yes.
People are dropping out like flies, falling over, smoke in their face. And people that are not in the military are like, what are you doing? Someone who captures this really well from an influencer or content creator standpoint is there's a soldier's, his tag is like mandatory fun day. He breaks this stuff down perfectly. I can't even begin to match his wit and his humor. But have those friends that are not in the military, just so that you can get a bead on like, hey, what is normal? And that doesn't mean that what we do in the military is bad. I like to make sure I say that too, because a lot of what we do, customs and courtesies, has a lot of heraldry, and it goes beyond just Air Force heraldry. This is like stuff that we have done since the Roman Empire, which men think about at least once a day. So here's our moment to think about this. But this stuff has been going on for ages, and it's wildly important. But having those civilian friends to be able to disconnect, kind of disassociate a little bit, you will always be, whether you're in, out, retired, separated, kicked out, I don't care what you are, you will always be that military member, that person who raised the right hand and said, send me. But it's also really good to be able to break away from that and give your mind a little bit of a break, because we demand a lot out of our airmen. We demand a lot out of just anybody that's underneath you, because all the people that listen to this might not have airmen. They might have civilians that work for them, but we demand a lot out of those guys too. And so being able to disconnect, have those civilian friends. So to be clear, have those civilian friends. Don't wear your uniform to and from work, just as a piece of advice. And then 3, have something that is yours. So for me, that thing is this space right here is the gym. I like to tell my young guys, like, hey, you can pick like 4 things. Pick 4 things. Your family should always be the number 1. The Air Force is going to be one of those things. Sorry, but just get over it.
Yeah.
College might be your third thing, and then for me, the gym is my fourth thing. And the reason I say that is because I've been guilty in the past of taking on too much.
Yeah.
And it almost starts to detract away from that very important role as a Air Force leader.